Hi. It's been a while since I've projected my being out into the world, and today I was called here on the spring equinox to emerge from a sort of cave that I've been in. And it's been an alchemical cave, and I wonder how y'all have been navigating the turbulence of life out there. So today, I wanted to tune in with this astrological, archetypal, gene keys infused wheel of cycles and archetypes and the energies that are present in our lives and as a collective, where we can track these cosmic cycles to gain more precision and awareness to our personal navigation. To know ourselves, to become more equanimous, to open our hearts and be the people we are, seated and came to be in our highest potential. So, big cycles. Today we're going to focus a lot on Chiron, but I'm going to back a few days to the new moon that happened in the 36th gene key. And so I just want to bring our awareness here. The new moon that happened was at the very last key of the whole entire zodiac. So the whole zodiac, spring equinox is the start of the zodiac. It's the birth point where the sun goes into Aries. And we've completed a cycle. We've gone from the most personal all the way around to the most transpersonal, and then we birth over this threshold. So not only did we have a new moon right at this very final point of the zodiac, but it was conjunct with Chiron, as Chiron was sitting in its last moments in the 36th gene key before it would ingress into the 25th and in the next few weeks be moving across that bridge into Aries as well. Okay, so translation of all those words that were just spoken. Chiron is a call to the soul to be woken through the wound. And the 36th gene key is moving from turbulence to humanity and compassion. Again, this is where the new moon was seeding an energy. It's like a portal opened up and because there's a seed planted, but it's not like just for this lunation. It feels like it's this holographic pinpoint of awareness for a seed on a much larger scale, because it's touching. Chiron has an orbit of 50 years. This asteroid that's about to cross this threshold, and the new moon comes and joins and gathers its energy. And it touches this point of the sacred wound. 36 is compassion, finding the purpose of our suffering, and opening our hearts in the face of turbulence, of pain, and finding the grace inside of all of the law of life, inside of the wound. So here we had Chiron. And Chiron, again, this is represented by being woken up through the wound. And how many of you in your lives have you been experiencing pain and suffering? I wonder. Obviously, it's part of the human journey, and we've all been working through our stuff and supporting others and working through their stuff. Probably, it's our birthright. It's what we're here doing. But Chiron is that, it's that part of our soul that's scheduled to wake up to another part of our being, to surrender our allegiance to our conditioned self and to the ego, and to find ourselves coming alive and into a higher potential that is lying inside of our most broken place, right? It's when our heart breaks open. So Chiron, I just want to track it a little bit here, has been in Pisces since 2011. So 7 years of Chiron moving through Pisces, where we engage the collective wound, where we engage the soup of all of our shared world psyche, as well as the world pain body, and where we interface the victim archetypes and all of the places that keep us from feeling safe inside of pain. And so for 7 years, Chiron has been in this sign, and in this deeply feminine, emotional, mystical sign, completing a 50-year cycle around the zodiac. And now in April, it's going to cross over into Aries. So I just want to contextualize a little bit of this for you to understand that this little zone right now where the new moon happened and where Chiron is passing, it's like it's signaling this cosmic shedding of a layer of the core. You know, it's not even just a layer. It feels like a cosmic shedding of like a core trauma of humanity, that we've moved through the cycles and culminated to that place where we all share in this one wound, where we all understand we're all equal inside of this, and this wound is here to transform us if we open into it. That's this 36, that's this Chiron energy. So when it's crossing this horizon, it literally is like we're standing at a threshold. And here today with the sun moving in to the 25 and the spring equinox, you know, the birth of the next cycle. Chiron sitting right here just, and I'm going to do this with you, just after the new moon 2 days ago, it moved into the 25th. So now Chiron has crossed over. It's not exactly in Aries yet. It's at 28 degrees Pisces, but it has now crossed over into the 25th, where it will be for many months, and over the next 10 months, 11 months, it's going to do a little cosmic stitch back and forth across this little bridge point. And so Chiron's going to retrograde back into Pisces in the 36 sometime in this late summer. I don't know the exacts on this right now, but then it's going to cross back and enter into Aries for its complete transition in February 2019. So just to give you a sense, Chiron is going to be doing like I like to think of it as a stitch. It's like I'm pulling my thread from the most collective wound to the most personal wound, then back into the collective, and then back into the personal and onward. So a stitch where we're kind of like stitching the soul of the world back in, stitching the macro back into the micro, that fractal holographic understanding that we all share in this. So what is some practical information here? What is your relationship to the wound, to your sacred wound? What is your relationship to suffering? That's a very broad question, but I find it to be the most, it's so deep, it's so relevant to life experience, because if I can be honest about my triggers and about my loops of pain and pattern, that means that I'm available and willing to meet suffering in a different way than it would be if I was closed to it. So if I'm not really available because it's not felt safe, and I don't have cultivated safety inside of my being to meet the pain with openness, then my relationship to suffering is going to be founded on my unconscious patterning to protect me from my pain. That's a lot of what the Venus sequence is, and we see these line placements and gene keys that are that operate at the shadow when we turn away from the pain of our lives and from the kinks and the places that just need more love and attention. So I want to talk a little bit about the 25th gene key, because that's this bridge point from the Pisces to the Aries, from the collective to the personal, from the 36 of this wide range of, am I open to suffering? What's my overall relationship to keeping my heart open in the face of pain? And into the 25, which is actually this, it's like the same code. It really holds the same like hub frequency of how we deal with suffering, but it's almost on a more mechanical level to me. It's a little bit more practical and personal. So instead of navigating things purely on an emotional level, can I handle that emotional charge? Am I staying open or am I closing? Do I fear suffering or do I open and experience the grace? The 25 moves from constriction to acceptance and universal love. So it's more, okay, when suffering comes up, am I breathing? And what's my posture? Not just am I open or closed, but down to the like inner, mechanics of every way that from every angle I might be caught in my in a shallow breath pattern here because I don't feel safe. Or if I'm not physically allowing the vibration of a discomfort coming in. I love the transmission of this 25. Thank you, Richard. In the audio, he talks about allow, accept, embrace on this whole nother level of, can I meet discomfort simply first and foremost on a physical level? I don't have to like it. I don't have to embrace it or understand it. I just feel what I'm feeling in my body. And that is this whole skill, and practice to cultivate, and really is the cultivation of safety, because we're slowing down. What happens in those moments when we do allow discomfort in our bodies, we're creating spaciousness. We're breathing deeper. There's all these inner mechanics of how we're relating to this. And so with the 25, when we enter into acceptance, there's this real unlocking of a deeper love that comes through and shines out into the world as unconditional love. And this is what I'm seeing is that because we're doing this bridge, straddle, stitch of the cosmic to the personal, we're being called into a more personal test of what is your relationship with pain and suffering in your life. And with Chiron, again, it's being awoken. It's being woken up through the wound. And it's surrendering and sacrificing all of our identity that is part of the mortal self, the conditioned self, that has just been looped in a cycle of karmic pain. So, it's a lot of words talking about this very potent experience and nuanced experience of life. So I want to talk about a little bit about the holographic relationships with other planetary influences right now, because we can't just narrow into one and get the whole story. We need to feel the whole kind of imprint of what's occurring on other dimensions. And I want to talk about Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio. It went retrograde March 8th after a whole setup phase since December, where we're basically, so simultaneously, everything I've been talking about with this wound and opening, simultaneously, Jupiter is expanding and amplifying the signal of the shadow. Because the Scorpio is the area of the psyche where we kind of repress and bury the darkness inside of us, meaning all the shit we don't want to face, all the stuff that's really hard to look at, kind of gets pushed down and becomes shadow material. Ooh, it becomes distorted archetypes. It becomes tainted sexuality. It becomes secrets. And, you know, you can feel that like occult kind of dark magic, or even just the buried subconscious aspects of our psyche. This is the realm of Scorpio. It also has many bright places when the phoenix can like stand in that volcanic magma fire and turn, you know, transmute into higher wisdom, into you know, those higher mystical, like the alchemy coming about. But with this cycle, Jupiter retrograde, which I'm going to do a whole other focused drop on this, but I really wanted to weave it in because simply the signal of the shadow is amplified. It ingressed into Scorpio in October when the Me Too movement came out. You saw secrecy like blown up in the collective, and on and on. We're seeing, for me personally, they're like the strata, the base tones and the deeper strata of my psyche have been accessed over the past months. Woohoo! Like, it's totally what is that part of us that's reclaiming our power. It's where our power has been, or aspects of our power that's been, you know, like hidden to us. And so we want to go there, and it's a great thing, and like, yes, but it's fucking hard. And so accessing these places, it's like we are in the swampland of the soul. And Jungian analysts call shame the swampland of the soul. And Scorpio is this area where we are being called, Jupiter, to expand our potential to optimize and plant seeds of growth in cultivating safety inside of the swampland of the soul, to really meet shame on a deeper level. And so as that's all happening, it's like wide, I mean, look at that. And when we had the new moon here in the final degrees of Pisces, we were in a nice trine with Jupiter in doing its thing in Scorpio. So there's a connection of our relationship to our wound is being given an opportunity to really like be trained and go into those deeper areas and open up into more and more of the subterranean content of our being. Yeah. So how are you guys doing? How's it going? You having fun? It's been very deep and hard for me personally, and I know there's so much goodness. So yeah, let me feel where we want to go from here. I definitely have a lot more to say. There's a lot of Capricorn energies here with the sextile of Pluto in between, connecting the trine to this nice sextile here. You know, and so a lot of transformation of and on the world stage and in our, you know, societal structures. And we're going to do a whole other drop also on the Capricorn influences right now. But today, I just really wanted to bring our attention and energy to this amazing passage of Chiron, completing a 50-year cycle of moving through the entire zodiac, coming to the very end of Pisces and calling us to awaken the collective wound and take responsibility of that, you know, soul level awakening inside of our personal beings as it moves into Aries and then stitches back through into Pisces. So I feel like the 25th gene key is a really great guide right now. It's the Allow, Accept, Embrace transmission. And if you haven't heard the audio, I highly recommend the audio commentary from Richard. It's so beautiful and very practical, supportive goals. can you share about a home practice to stay connected on this passage? I'm struggling to stay present in my soul purpose. Yes, absolutely. I totally know what you mean by it. It's been really hard for me, too, to stay present in my soul purpose as all of the stuff is falling away. Because how much of myself has been, how much of like my identification with what I'm here for and what my purpose is has been partly due to the conditioned, like I have to go out and seek validation and value and worth externally in the world. Like I have to be someone. I need to be of service so that I can be loved. So the total breakdown of self has been occurring for me personally. I haven't had access. Like I haven't been doing this, my little transmissions for a while. So I guess I'm sharing my personal story just to say I feel you so much, Trina. And home practice. So home being, your home, but also your community. And you mentioned dancing. So dancing has been an incredible place for me to shed a lot of the emotions that come up and that are in my field. I think so much physical body movement is so important during this time because like we can do a lot of work here, right? But then we have to be integrated into the body because the feminine is returning. The wisdom of the feminine needs to be really brought into our healing practices. And so here's something I wanted to touch on. We're speaking about safety. So a practical thing that I've realized is the most important thing that I can do is right now is to create containers of safety where I can move into deeper strata of shame, deeper levels of my shadow that I haven't had the courage to touch before or the capacity to touch. So that can look like many things. So I highly recommend joining together with community. I've had a couple sister circles in the last, actually 3 different opportunities to join with other sisters and have a pulse and a rhythm to gather around and support each other. To me, that's been huge in having containers to move into some unsafe terrain, but with the virtue of the collective, vulnerability, safety, love, unconditional, all of that to hold us. So healing rituals, remembering ritual, so absolutely key. And to me, remembering ritual is simply acknowledging the power of containers, of lighting a candle before you do your yoga and making an intention, and then letting your body communicate to you. So much of right now, the feminine stream, for me, the teachings of the feminine have been around the unknown. And this brings me to how are we growing in cycles? I feel like as a culture, as who knows, as a people, or a more like colonized society, whatever, we've lost touch with our capacity to really grow because we've lost touch with the natural cycle. And part of growth is meeting these thresholds, these bridge points where something is dying and something is being born. And we stand on these thresholds where we don't know what's to come. And I know that I really know that you all know this. Like I know that the birth-death cycle is something we experience on a day-to-day basis with the rise and set of the sun, or inside of our lives with family members and relationships, and having to learn to change and let go and breathe into the unknown, which is where Uranus and the moon are right now, in the 3rd gene key of letting go into change. The death part is very feminine to me because it's about like letting go into the unknown. But it's not just because I've had this thing where it's like, trust the unknown. I'm gonna work on my relationship to the unknown. I'm going to start to have a more openness towards it. I'm going to notice when I fear it and all this stuff. But recently I had the transmission of, oh, but wake up inside of it. Like, what does it mean to live inside of the unknown? Now that's something completely, like a whole nother level of waking up inside of it and being like, oh, right now I am making choices and movements in my life that I have no idea what the hell is going on. I don't know if this is correct. I can't. So, but we're like trusting and following guidance, and this is very feminine. So, the rise of the feminine, for men and for women and for all in between, just acknowledging this call to the growth cycle, the birth-death cycle, the being able to meet thresholds with grace. And so I keep thinking about your question now, Trina, about home practices. So we talked about ritual, remembering ritual, and creating containers, whether they're like for a night with you alone or with a group, over time, or like just with yourself as a crucible for a longer period of time. Like right now, I'm in a crucible of unlocking my creativity and my sexuality and being in the vital stream of my creative potency. That's the crucible that my life path is on. So by creating that container for myself, now I like all the data and experiences that I have in my life is informing me and feeding back into that through line that I'm carrying through. So I can't say enough about container crucibles. And let me think also, safety. So incredibly crucial, because it really is the make or break of whether we're going to learn a new way to embrace our suffering or not. And so the safety is about a welcoming stance for me. Like, am I welcoming this, or am I, doing this? I love that word, welcome, a welcoming stance. So I just bring that into your awareness. So Trina, I desire more community that would also support me, as I have more desire for a safe container to expand. It's to me, I don't know where I would be without cultivated community. Even just like 3 other people, that meet on a monthly basis, gather together, find your people, your pod, and just set up some regular rhythm of being together in that. And you're a great facilitator of those kinds of things. You could really, I really see you activating that. Is there any other questions or interests in this whole thing? We've talked about a lot of stuff today, and we're in the setup phase for a Mercury retrograde in Aries. And so I want to do a separate transmission on that. But just know that from March 8th, the same day that Jupiter went retrograde, until Mercury retrograde in a few days, it's the setup phase. So a setup phase means, okay, track the themes and, information that's been coming to you over the last couple weeks, from the 8th to the 23rd, I think is when it goes retrograde. I might be wrong on that. That's going to tell you what unconscious material is wanting to be surfaced through the Mercury retrograde. And all retrogrades are just bringing unconscious material up. And if we're aware and we're listening and tracking and following, then Mercury doesn't need to be a big trickster and mess up our lives, like so much of the superstitions around Mercury retrograde is. So I'll do a separate one on that, but just be aware that when we enter into this Mercury retrograde cycle, it's entering into this domain of the personal, of the masculine, of, where so much is now crossing into the threshold of our personal responsibility for our choices and how we are, making change happen on the planet. And all the archetypes, the warrior, the tyrant, the leader, the pioneer, are going to be up, and we can talk more about that at a different time. I feel like we've covered a lot of good stuff. I'm tempted to roll the dice. I think I'll roll the dice and pull a card and just see if there's anything else that wants to be brought to our attention, and then also welcoming questions or insights, things that you want to share about the content that we've been. Nice. Yeah. Thoughts and words. Yeah. Great. Sweet. Yeah. All of us here, I just know that we're all, I tend to, be talking to the leaders and the facilitators that are out there doing this great work. So I always feel like, in a way, I'm just saying exactly what you already know, and I'm just a reminder for you to go, that's right, I know that. So let's roll the dice and just see if there's any planetary energy that wants to be brought into the mix or emphasized at this moment. Standing at the spring equinox, the gates into a new cycle, being awoken by the wound. Mars. Sweet. Mars is the ruler of Aries. So we've been drawn to the domain of Aries, where Chiron will soon cross the threshold into a new birth cycle into Aries, and now where the sun has crossed over just yesterday or today with the spring equinox, just crossing over into Aries, where we also have Mercury going to be going retrograde and doing a whole inventory of the Aries archetype in our psyche, where it's also right now conjunct Venus, and where the moon and Uranus are conjunct Aries, and that Uranus is going to be completing a 7-year cycle of being in Aries, revolutionizing the individual, and now moving into revolutionizing our growth cycles, our stability, our resources, our values. So that to say, there's a lot of energy in this area, but where is Mars itself? Mars is actually up at the winter solstice point. So that's pretty cool. Whenever the sun crosses this threshold, which is this 90-degree angle to the spring equinox, that's what we call the winter solstice. And so Mars is actually sitting right at the winter solstice point. And here's what I'm getting from that. It's bringing our awareness to the pivotal moment that we're in. Whenever I look at angles, like the spring equinox or the solstice points, I feel this sense of like pivot. It's like our activation sequence with the gene keys. They hold this anchor point, right? And each of these points, they're like these places where our soul kind of like hooks itself, like in the coordinates of the collective soul, in celestial alignments. It's like where our soul like hooks itself and finds like a certain navigational tension point of movement. Whenever we have activity across our personal angles, ascendant, descendant, midheaven, IC, these are life-changing moments. And so in like the chart of the world chart, Aries is the ascendant, Capricorn is the midheaven, the winter solstice point, the now spring equinox point. This is like the pivot points of the world chart. So we're at a pivot point. And I don't know if you all can feel that. There's such a tumultuous, we've been in a revolutionary cycle for how long? Like how many decades? Like 1960s when Pluto and Uranus were conjunct in the past, like seeds for a revolution that was squaring off 2012 to 2015. So end of the Kali Yuga, like we're talking we're always in a cycle of transformation. There's always a counterculture. There's always a revolution. But there's something about this time that it's almost like, okay, if we meet these pivot points every year the sun like crosses these pivot points. There's always cool things happening and little like cyclical like ping points and things occurring out in the cosmos. But how much are we utilizing? It's always an opportunity. And I feel like over time, when we take the opportunity again and again to transform and to grow and to use these pivot points as real movements of entering into new terrain into our life, entering into the unknown, allowing something to birth through us that has never been born before. A part of our soul purpose that we don't have concept for. Like, we don't even know the ways our purpose is operating out there in the world, right? It's mysterious. We have to give it space to be mysterious, to not know itself through knowing and real clear, like, I did this and that person said this and I know my purpose. It's like there's so much information, intelligence, and movement happening in the fields that I don't know what my embodiment is actually doing out there. Maybe my purpose is like fully active, but it doesn't have a tangible, I get to know it. It's calling me to trust it. It's calling me to allow space for it to move. Okay, so back to the pivot point is that the more I'm doing this work and aligning to the cycles, I hit a pivot point and I've got some traction. And now I'm making a threshold shift. I am crossing a bridge. And again, this is Chiron after 50 years of being on the journey through the entire archetypal cycles of the psyche of the zodiac matrix. We are coming to Chiron's completion of the omega point into the alpha, from the macro to the micro, and it's making a stitch from the cosmic to the most interpersonal for the next 11 months. So, and crossing over into Aries in April. And right now, having just finished the 36 gene key and just after the new moon entered into the 25th gene key that holds this threshold. We're at a threshold. We're at a very real threshold. And to me, the threshold is about, as I've been speaking, allowing space for the unknown, allowing the death-birth cycle, remembering what growth cycles really mean, allowing the feminine intelligence to start to really inform us a bit more, give her more space, and allow the wound to wake you up, because that's what it's here to do. And so, it's just like a call to like courage, to go farther, to go deeper, to have more access, to have more capacity to feel the shit inside of your cells. And the allowing physical discomfort is the process of alchemy that Jupiter retrograding in Scorpio is really giving us the potential to break free, become emotionally clean, and then navigate our life forward as a powerful, sovereign, integrally interdependent, related synarchy of consciousness. And I freaking love you guys. Gaias, gals, everyone in between. Yeah, we rolled Mars. That was a whole thing. You guys are amazing. I love you. I love you, Russell. Oh my God, I love you, Denise. I love you, Peter. All you beautiful people. I guess we could be complete, but I'm wondering if we pull a card. What do you guys think? Are we complete, or should we pull a card for Mars? Yeah, Nate, totally. We can talk later, and you can replay the video too. There was a lot of information here. And I would be down to drop in. Chiron is a deep, deep place to be. We're going to pull a card. We got the card. Okay. So let's all collectively pull this one. Okay. So the card is one of the, and I know it's backwards for you guys. I always do that. Can you read this? Okay, I'm not going to confuse you. It says, or maybe that's actually a way that your brain works more efficiently if it can read backwards. I don't know. Life card. So this is one of those contemplation cards. There's 3 different cards. When you play the game, there's transit cards that tell you to move a token. By the way, this is a real game you can have. So to move your planetary token a certain place. There's creative contemplation cards, which are dope, which are like sing a freestyle about this key or whatnot. Do some drawing, do some poetry or enacting theater. And then the life cards. And this is a contemplation card that asks, how does this key support or challenge your daily rhythms and work ethic? Okay, so we rolled the dice. It was Mars. Mars brought us to that whole conversation about the pivot points because Mars is at the winter solstice point and it was squaring here, the spring equinox point, pivoting us into a new reality, making choices that are in alignment with our soul. So how does that, now we follow the synchronicity of how does this relate to our daily rhythms and work ethic? Well, that's the 6th house. That's related to the 6th house in Virgo, which is the opposing sign of Pisces. So it's about integrating Pisces into the earthly plane, giving the mystical a place to actually operate inside of our lives, our daily lives. I think that's a great question. How are you making soul level choices, or let's say choices that support your soul growth, your soul esteem, your soul healing, in your day-to-day rhythms, in your morning practice? Ooh, that's a good one. In your work ethic. So that's speaking to like the discipline towards, I'm going to actually follow through on this intention to, hold a crucible for my healing, like we were talking about before. Yeah, I think daily rhythms and work ethic is a great place to contemplate everything we've been talking about here, because it can be easy to only find a little this much space for this kind of thinking, and then everything else is the mundane of reality. But what if that of reality was the domain, the crucible, like we said, where the synchronicities of life, where soul level decisions is all happening? And it's infused in that. So how do we infuse soul into the daily rhythms, I think is really the question. And how do you guys do it? I mean, morning practice is, or just a daily practice, exercise, I don't know. There's ways to organize and ways to be fluid and great. I love you guys. Yes, everyone in between. That was a long transmission. I feel like we could talk forever. And maybe I'll do another one of these focusing on Mercury retrograde in Aries and more on Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio. And, on and on. We have so much more to talk about. Love you all. Love you, Sherry. Yeah. Have an incredible moment in time this spring equinox. Planting the seeds for new cycle. Finding center, balance. Okay. Bye-bye.